There's a part of the world almost no one talks about. Two countries tucked away in the heart of Southeast Asia. Stunning, packed with history, but pretty much forgotten. Cambodia and Laos. Ever wondered why, despite all their natural beauty and rich culture? Barely anyone wants to live there? What's really behind this population gap? Buckle up, because the answer goes way deeper than you'd think. After World War II, both Cambodia and Laos went through some seriously rough times. Even though they were once French colonies, independence didn't bring peace. Instead, it kicked off decades of war, dictatorships, and isolation. In Cambodia, the darkest chapter began in the 1970s when the Khmer Rouge, a hardcore communist regime led by Pol Pot, took over. Their goal? To build a perfect agrarian society by wiping out anything that looked even remotely Western. Cities, money, schools, religion, all of it had to go. The result? One of the most horrific genocides of the 20th century. Between 1975 and 1979, around 2 million Cambodians were killed. That's nearly a quarter of the entire population. People were executed for wearing glasses. Yep, seriously. Speaking another language or just being educated. Many others died from starvation, disease, or brutal forced labor. The trauma was massive. The country lost an entire generation of doctors, teachers, and intellectuals. Infrastructure was wrecked, the economy collapsed, and trust in the government was shattered for decades. Meanwhile, in Laos, things weren't much better, just less talked about. During the Vietnam War, Laos became a major supply route for the Viet Cong, and the US launched one of the biggest bombing campaigns in history there. In fact, Laos is said to be the most heavily bombed country per capita in the world, and millions of those bombs are still lying around unexploded. In 1975, Laos also went full communist under the Lao People's Revolutionary Party. Just like in Cambodia, the regime brought tight censorship, a locked-down economy, and barely any connection to the outside world. Both countries ended up totally isolated. Foreign investment, pretty much non-existent. Infrastructure, healthcare, education, all of it fell way behind. While neighbors like Thailand and Vietnam started opening up and booming, Cambodia and Laos were stuck in the past. Today, even with some tourism and economic progress, the scars are still obvious. Widespread poverty, fear of political instability, and a generation of young people dreaming of leaving for a better life in neighboring countries. The truth is, this recent history explains a lot. Why so few people live there? Why so many want out? The weight of the past still hangs heavy over the present. After decades of war and authoritarian regimes, both Cambodia and Laos have tried to rebuild. But here's the harsh truth. These countries are still among the poorest in the world. And when you look at the numbers, it all adds up. The HDI, Human Development Index, tells the story. It measures quality of life based on income, education, and health. Cambodia sits below the global average, and Laos is doing even worse. In both places, millions of people live on less than €3 a day. Outside the capital cities, decent schools are rare. Hospitals? In many areas, they don't even exist. Basic infrastructure is seriously lacking. Crumbling roads, almost no sanitation in rural areas, constant power outages. Now imagine trying to run a business or even study in those conditions. Pretty much a dead end. And that's why so many people just give up and leave. The result? A silent rural exodus. Young people and whole families abandon their villages and head for the bigger cities, or cross the border looking for a better life in Thailand or Vietnam. And it's not always about chasing dreams. Sometimes it's just about survival. Meanwhile, the local governments are struggling to attract foreign investment. Corruption, heavy bureaucracy, and political instability are still major roadblocks. No one wants to risk their money in a place where the system could flip overnight. And to make things worse, the little economic growth that does exist isn't being shared. Most of the profits from tourism or natural resources end up in the hands of elites or foreign companies. In other words, regular people stay stuck in poverty with no real way out. You might be thinking, but why doesn't anyone help? Simple. a lack of international interest, with so many global conflicts and emerging economies fighting for attention. Cambodia and Laos rarely make the headlines, and that's exactly why so few people want or are able to live well in these countries. It's not about a lack of beauty, culture, or potential. It's about something more basic, the lack of real conditions to actually build a future. Now, even though the past was rough and the economy's far from ideal, there's something deeper that helps explain why so few people live well here. Geography and cultural isolation. Both Cambodia and Laos have seriously tough terrain. In Laos, most of the country is covered in dense mountains, tropical forests, and remote valleys. Some villages are so far out that you can only get there by foot or boat, and that could take hours, even days. That slows everything down. Transport, healthcare, trade, and education. In Cambodia, the brutal climate adds to the challenge. Heavy rainy seasons cause regular flooding, cutting entire villages off from the rest of the country. Then during the dry season, the heat and drought hit hard, building infrastructure in these conditions. It's a nightmare. And then there's the cultural isolation. In Laos, for example, dozens of ethnic groups and languages are scattered across remote areas. Sounds beautiful, and it is, but it also makes communication, integration, and access to public services way harder. Some people still live in villages where they've never left their region or even learned the country's official language. This mix of geographic and cultural fragmentation means public policies don't really reach everyone. Progress gets stuck in the capital cities while the rural areas are left behind, like they're frozen in time. The result? Thousands of people living in conditions that feel like they're straight out of the last century. Here's the core issue. It's not that these countries lack natural beauty or cultural identity. They have plenty of both. But when people are cut off by mountains, broken roads, different languages, and harsh weather, everything becomes harder, even staying put. That's why, despite the stunning landscapes, ancient temples, and fascinating cultures, not many people choose to stick around. The cost of staying is high, and for most the payoff just isn't there. Now, if you really want to understand why Cambodia and Laos have fallen so far behind, just look around. Neighboring countries like Thailand, Vietnam, even Malaysia faced similar struggles last century. Wars, dictatorships, economic collapse, but today they're miles ahead in terms of development. Thailand, for instance, went all in on tourism, infrastructure, and education. It turned Bangkok into a modern megacity, brought in tech companies, and built a stable economy that creates jobs for millions, including loads of Cambodians and Laotians who cross the border to work. Vietnam, which went through its own devastating war, made a smart move. It opened up its economy, bet on industrial production, and now exports everything from clothes to electronics. And the wild part? It's been growing steadily for over 20 years, becoming a Southeast Asian success story. Meanwhile, Cambodia and Laos are still stuck in a loop of underdevelopment. The roads are still broken, the hospitals are still empty, the schools are still falling apart. Young people, they leave, the older ones stay behind, and the neighbors, they just keep moving forward. That comparison says it all. This isn't just bad luck or a matter of time. It's about political choices, national priorities, and real commitment to change. Until that happens, these two countries will remain on the sidelines, invisible to the world and forgotten by many. But Cambodia and Laos aren't just statistics or lost dots on the map. They're nations full of culture, resilience, and untapped potential, suffocated by decades of pain, isolation, and poor leadership. The real question is, will the world keep turning its back on them? Or will we finally look their way with empathy and see what almost no one sees?